It's not fair, but at the same time, I'm not really sure there's anything you can do to correct that. I mean, by nature, the wild card is by definition the wild card. You didn't win the division, so you have to play the wild card game. It's kind of how it works. Here's the thing, though: the Cardinals, as good as they've been all year, are not playing well in September.
No.
That late season magic for them might be running a bit thin. They're 4-9 in September. They're in real. The Pirates and the Cubs are gaining pretty quickly, so there's still a chance for a shakeup there. But it is a little bit unfair. I mean, you're looking at a matchup potentially if it ended right now, you'd see Garrett Cole versus Jake Arrieta probably in the wild card game, Pirates versus Cubs. And as you said, it's the best division probably in baseball. So it's only fair that they would get 3 teams, but then to have them play each other, and then the winner of the wild card game would probably play the Cardinals.
Yeah, they're gonna have to play the Cardinals.
Basically the road to the playoffs the road to the World Series runs through the NL Central. They're not gonna shut anyone down. I think they're just not gonna pitch and just keep in a locker somewhere. But what they're gonna do, at least with Harvey, I know for sure, he's gonna pitch, but he's gonna pitch like 4 or 5 innings, and that'll be it. And it's just they're gonna conserve him that way. That way he can get his reps in and throw, but he's still not, he's not pushing it too far. So today what we're going to do is we're going to take a closer look at some of the most hotly contested races in the major leagues. And as coincidence would have it, most of them happen to fall in the American League. It's really, really a lot of it's still up for grabs. So we're going to move across the country. Since we're on the East Coast, we'll start with the American League East. The Toronto Blue Jays and the Yankees are fighting for that spot. The Blue Jays currently 2.5 games above the Yankees, while the Yankees hold on to the first wild card spot and actually open a series, I believe, tonight, those 2 teams in Toronto. Hello and welcome back to SportsZone. This is going to be our baseball segment. We're getting to third base, and the season just about over. We got right about a week left. These races are starting to get wrapped up. So instead of talking about that, as we've done in the past 2 weeks, we're going to look towards the postseason, not make playoff predictions, but we're going to make award predictions. We're running out of time to get that in. So now is as good a time as any, right?
Yeah, of course.
So we're going to take a look at the MVP, the Cy Young, and Rookie of the Year in each league. I've got Vince and I've got Deepak who are going to provide us with their insights on this one. So let's start in the National League and talk National League MVP. A lot of people think it's staying local. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with both of you. I think certainly Harper is the easy choice. Over 40 home runs. He's just 22 years old. I mean, what can you say? He's just a ridiculous talent in all sense of the word. So we're going to shift leagues, head over to the American League now, and talk about that MVP. Might be a bit more hotly contested. Well, Mike Trout is as much of a 5-tool player as you were going to see in today's game. So it's certainly, as you said, he won it last year. It's a popular pick. 2 interesting names for sure. I think those are going to be the top 2 vote getters. How they decide to go, we'll see. I think Trout is a safer pick because he's Mike Trout and he's got the name power. I think Donaldson may be the right choice, but that's just my opinion. And I saw an interesting stat on Donaldson, the first player for the Blue Jays to hit 40 home runs and 40 doubles since Carlos Delgado back in 2000.
Yep.
So it's been a long time coming for those Blue Jays. So we'll head from offense to pitching. We'll stay in the American League this time, and we are going to award the American League Cy Young. All right, 2 big names. I think Keuchel, 17-0 at home or 15-0 at home. Something just ridiculous.
Something like Jose Fernandez, though, with Marlins.
Jose Fernandez is 17-0, I believe, and Keuchel 15-0. But Fernandez over 2 different seasons, and he had the Tommy John, and he's been in and out of the rotation. But yeah, still very good. He's a name to watch in the future for a Cy Young if he can stay on the field. We'll move to the National League now. Another kind of a 2-horse race, really, for this one. Zach Greinke, Jake Arrieta. Both those teams headed to the playoffs, almost guaranteed. Well, Arrieta, I believe the major league leader in wins. He's got 21 wins now on the year. Greinke, on the other hand, leading in ERA at like 1.6 or something along those lines. We're going to stick with the Cubs, actually, and change gears a little bit in awards. NL Rookie of the Year. The front runner for that one is on the Cubs, Chris Bryant. He's really taken the league by storm this year. He's the only name I can really think of for Rookie of the Year. I 100% agree. May have gotten his season off to a week later start than everyone else, but you wouldn't know that from looking at his numbers, like he's been in the majors for 5 years already. We'll switch over to the American League, Rookie of the Year. A few names can be thrown around, I guess, more for this one. I know personally, I think it goes to Carlos Correa of the Astros. That's a young team that's really blossomed this year. All right, there you go. Those are your 6, well, more than 6 awards we've covered. A lot of names to think about. for you over at home. I think we might be running out of time, but really quickly, I said we'd come back to Jonathan Papelbon. He's been suspended for the rest of the year by both the MLB and the Nationals after choking out Bryce Harper in the dugout. And in the weirdest situation possible, he then went on to pitch the 9th inning and give up 5 runs to the Phillies in a game the Nationals lost. So that was just a total disaster. And the manager of the Nationals, Matt Williams, probably on his last legs as manager, did not handle it very well either. What I'll say about the Cardinals is that they know how to win. They have a winning culture. And you said they had injuries, and a lot of people thought it would hurt them. Matt Holliday missed a lot of time. Matt Adams has been out all year, their first baseman.
And Wainwright.
Wainwright's been gone the whole year, although he's back for the playoffs out of the bullpen, which scares me to death as a Mets fan.
So he started his career.
But it doesn't matter. The next guy just steps up, and they continue to win. You said their best record in baseball without Holliday, without Wainwright. They'll be without Carlos Martinez, one of their top young pitchers, but it's always just next man up with the Cardinals. I think they're in a similar boat as the Cubs, actually, in terms of the fact that they weren't expected to be there, and they kind of overperformed what everyone expected from them. And they're just a very young team all around. Pitching, the offense, it's all very young. And I think if they can, this is a big deal. I mean, they're playing at Yankee Stadium in the playoffs. That's a big it's a big moment to live up to. If they don't get fazed by the moment, I think they can be okay. Honestly, if I'm a Yankee fan, I'm a little concerned. I think the Astros can match up with the Yankees pretty well. So I think as long as they don't get fazed by the stage, they'll be okay. Yeah, the Cubs, they're performing pretty well. I think they've certainly, you said they're a young team, and much like the Astros, they've kind of managed to live up to the hype and live it up to the stage. I talked about this last week when we discussed the wild card game about whether or not the Astros could handle playoffs at Yankee Stadium. Mm-hmm. They did very well. Dallas Keuchel threw a gem, and they pulled it out. The Cubs, I think, are the same. The Cardinals are that playoff experienced team, and the Cubs are going toe-to-toe with them round for round every way. I think their performance is to be praised. They have Arrieta going in Game 3, which always gives them an advantage because he's been magical since August 1st. I mean, he's ERA like .3 since August 1st, which is ridiculous.
The only 2 home runs that he's let up and the only loss that he's gotten was thanks to that no-hitter throw.
It was thanks to the no-hitter for Cole Hamels. So I think that certainly gives them an advantage in Game 3. The Cardinals starting pitching has been interesting. I've been surprised with the names they've gone with.
Of course.
John Lackey Game 1, Jaime Garcia Game 2.
I
expected some Michael Wacha in there, but maybe they're lining up Wacha for Arrieta, which would be an interesting matchup for sure. But Arrieta's, like I said, has been ridiculous. So advantage Cubs in that area.
And I mean, obviously,
and
Joe
at Wrigley
Maddon.
Field, I think gives them an advantage as well.
And Joe Maddon brings a whole new culture. Also, it should be noted that the Cardinals have not won a World Series when they've gone into the postseason with 100 wins since the 60s.
Well, they've done what they needed to do. They survived Lester and Arrieta. More than survived, they thrived on Lester and Arrieta. And I think certainly Terry Collins said it before the game that if they could beat Arrieta, they're in good shape. And I'm inclined to agree. I mean, you look, they're going to Chicago, but you got Jacob deGrom, who's the ace of that one of them, but probably the best of the 3 aces they have. Going against Lance Hendricks, Lance Hendricks of the Chicago Cubs. The fact that I didn't know his name should tell you enough about that pitching matchup, I think.
Until he throws a perfect game against you.
But I think, obviously it's been an inconsistent offensive effort by the Mets. And the fact that they've won anyway, I think, is even more of a good sign. Signs of life from David Wright yesterday. RBI double in the first inning, hit a ball really hard that was caught by Chris Bryant, I think in the 7th. So 2 well-hit balls, progress from him because he's been mired in a miserable slump this postseason. Yeah. Cespedes drove in a run with an infield hit, so signs of life from him as well. If they can get some more of that offense going, like Wright and Cespedes, the sky's the limit for this team, really. It's both, if that's possible. I mean, obviously, the Mets, this is not the first time, actually, the Mets have taken out insurance policies on more than one contract. They got a lot of money back from David Wright's contract this year also when he went down with his spinal stenosis and missed months of time. Some of his contract bounced back to the team, and Henry Mejia, because of his suspension, also didn't have to get paid by the Mets. So this is not a new thing for the Mets. And Scott Boras, I'm sick of Scott Boras. Look. Scott Boras, you're not a doctor. You're not a manager. You're not a general manager. Do your job and don't worry about what the manager does, all right? It's not your business, all right? You can negotiate contracts all you want, but don't get involved in anything on the field. It's not your place. Well, that's better, actually, because I think the Mets' success in this series does rely solely on their offense. Vince talked a little bit about the Royals' pitching. It is better than it was last year, but it's still not spectacular. Cueto was the big addition, the trade deadline acquisition. But, even with Cueto, I think the number was like their starting pitching ERA was like 4.24 over the course of the regular season, which is not spectacular.
Putting it mildly.
Yeah, it's not great, and obviously Cueto would bring that down, and Ventura had a really good second half. But, that's probably their biggest weakness. If the Mets can get a lead early, I think they have a good shot. The key for the Mets is going to be you can't get to the 7th inning trailing. If you get to the 7th inning trailing, game's over.
Yeah.
With that Royals bullpen with Madsen and Kelvin Herrera and Wade Davis, they're the best in the business, and it's done. But if the Mets can get to the Royals starters and either get them out of the game earlier or, if they can put up maybe 4 or 5 runs a game, I think, kind of like what they did against the Cubs, 4-2, 4-1, 5-2. I think those are the kind of games that these are going to be. So if the Mets can put up 4, 5, 6 runs a game, I think they're going to be okay. Well, he's instilled a good culture with these Royals. As Vince kind of talked about, the Royals, much like the Astros in the past also, it's been like, yeah, the Royals are going to make the World Series. Okay, sure. If you had told someone 5 years ago that they would have made 2 in a row, they would have put you in an institution, probably. So he's managed, in this could be what the Cubs are in like 3 years. And the Royals they're a young, homegrown kind of team, and he's taken them and he's helped them develop, and he's got them, where they want to be. He's put it all together into a cohesive unit that's now one of the best teams in baseball. So I think Ned Yost deserves a lot of credit for where this Royals team is. And of course, the way obviously his life is made a lot easier by the back end of that bullpen. That if his starter gets into any trouble, even in the 6th, he's got that luxury. But he's able to make the personnel decisions as well to make that work. And I think Ned Yost deserves a lot of credit. Well, the Nationals are starting to narrow down their list already after having fired Matt Williams promptly after their season ended. I believe Dusty Baker is high on their list as a manager. He's been a good manager throughout his career. He's had a lot of time away from the game in terms of the managerial aspect. He's been broadcasting it. He was on the TBS pregame show for the NLCS. But he's always been a good manager. I think he's a name to watch. I think Bud Black is on their list as well. He's also been away for a little bit. But those are the 2 names I would watch for the Nationals position. And maybe whoever doesn't get that could then swing out west for the Dodgers. I haven't heard any names necessarily swirling with them yet. It's a bit early in that process. The biggest takeaway from... it's tough to just take away from one game. My takeaway from the series is that the Royals are... Well, first of all, that I didn't do enough research on the Royals. Secondly, the Royals are just annoying. Because here's the thing, and it's interesting that I think it's why the Royals don't get a lot of national coverage. It's because they're not a sexy offensive team. They're not like the Blue Jays where they hit monster home runs. You got all the power hitters there. But what the Royals do is they single you to death.
Yeah. It's
just... A single, first and third, a single, first and third, a stolen base, and they just keep running around, and it's very aggravating. And because they are so good at putting the ball in play, you can't cut the rally by striking somebody out. Because even if you get like a ground ball, for example, and you get an out at first, the runner still scores, and then you got another guy on third, and it just keeps the line moving, which I know is their rallying cry over there in Kansas City. But yeah, it's just they're just pesky and annoying, and they don't go away.
Yeah, and you were actually at Citi Field for games 3 and 4. What would you say the atmosphere there was like? Obviously the Mets have been in World Series for the first time since 2000, and are on a 29-year drought. Now it's going to be a 30-year drought for a World Series title. Last time the one was '86. Kind of explain that environment right there and the atmosphere.
It was obviously an environment nothing I've ever seen before. Game 3, obviously the game the Mets won. It was so much more, but every time the ball is put in play, there's cheering and even just to have a full Citi Field, which was so rare since it's opened in 2009, because the Mets have been so bad and nobody's wanted to go. But for it to be a full house all the way through to the end of the game. It was loud, it was shaking, it was something completely different than I had ever seen before. Well, obviously we talked a little about the experience and how it probably helped them this year, and they're still a young team. There's really no reason to believe that this is the end of anything for Kansas City. Obviously they came in and really ran the American League all season. even if it was very under the radar because, as I said, they're not a sexy team, they're not a flashy team. But you look at like the players on this roster: Lorenzo Cain, Hosmer, Moustakis, even the pitchers in that bullpen. They're a young team, and Salvador Perez. They're all probably going to stick around. There's no reason to think that they won't be a perennial powerhouse in the American League. Yeah, there was some clamoring on the American League side of things that maybe Alex Rodriguez over Prince Fielder might have been an interesting choice. A-Rod was suspended whereas Fielder was hurt. I don't know if that weighed into the decision at all, but I think either of those guys is certainly a fine choice. Fielder really kind of carrying the Rangers to the playoffs this year after it looked like they were going to be non-competitive. So certainly credit to Prince. And Matt Harvey, a very solid choice in the National League. Obviously, I'm a big fan of his as a Mets fan myself. But yeah, I do think that's a good choice. I mean, 13 wins through the most innings combined regular season and postseason of anyone coming back from Tommy John surgery. Averaging
insurance policy on his arm too.
Yes, despite the insurance policy, averaging a little over a strikeout per inning throughout the entire season. So yeah, I think certainly a good choice. ERA under 3, both good choices. I would certainly agree with the voters on this one. Well, my favorite in the American League is Josh Donaldson. He won the Hank Aaron Award this season, which I believe is for best offensive player in both leagues. And certainly his defense is not a liability. He's known for, catches falling over tarps and falling into the stands. He was an instrumental part of the Blue Jays' success this season. 40-plus home runs, 40-plus doubles, one of the best in the league in RBIs. I think Donaldson is the correct choice. Mike Trout will get votes, of course, because he's Mike Trout, and he's just simply ridiculous. But I think Donaldson is the best option. Probably a consensus pick. It'll most likely be staying local. I think Bryce Harper is the clear favorite there. Again, also the Hank Aaron winner. Didn't come to Citi Field to pick up his award because he chickened out like a chicken, or a word that I'm not allowed to say on TV.
Chickens chicken out, yes.
Yes, so he chickened out and didn't come to Citi Field to collect his award because he was scared of getting booed, which he probably would have been. But certainly, this was the year that he really, everyone knew that it was only a matter of time until the 40 home run power came and the 100 RBIs came, and he really is the easy choice in the National League. Well, I think for those guys on the cusp, there's a chance this year because if you look the last 2 seasons in particular, you would have 4 or 5 guys on the first ballot who are guaranteed in. You got Randy Johnson, Pedro Martinez, Smoltz and Frank Thomas, and Maddox, and those guys are always they're just about automatic. You look at, especially on the pitching side, all of them over 300 wins, all the strikeouts, and it's hard. You can't point at any one of them and really be like, oh, we should wait a year on Maddox, because he's one of the game's best in the history of the Major League Baseball. So he was guaranteed a first ballot shot.
Maddox was supposed to be that guy that rivaled Tom Seaver for most.
Tom Seaver still got the highest percentage. Let's go Mets. But I certainly think he's in as a Met. Let that be known. But I certainly think this year, because you got 2 guys in Griffey and Hoffman who are probably guaranteed, but there's some space there. There's maybe two more guys who have been on the ballot for a while. I'm looking at Mike Piazza. He's been creeping up the votes the last few years. He got to 69% last year. You need 75. This may be his year. I think he's got a good shot this year just because it's only those 2, I think, who are going to guarantee themselves as first ballot. Well, it'll be interesting to see because, as you said, these don't happen that much in baseball. So there is a chance for Rob Manfred here, if he wanted to make an example of Reyes. And I haven't heard anything as of yet, anything coming down from the league. Obviously, they're in no rush. There's months until any games are played, so they don't have to really decide this very soon. But yeah, Rob Manfred, if he wanted to really kind of, this is how the MLB is going to handle this from now on, could certainly choose to make advantage of Reyes. It's interesting. Obviously, the shortstop for shortstop swap, I guess, is to be expected because now Ibar would have no purpose in Los Angeles with Simmons coming in. So that part of the deal makes sense. 2 top pitching prospects is a bit steep of a price for a player who's a little bit one-dimensional. That's not to say Simmons doesn't hit, but he's not Mike Trout, who's one of the best defensive players in football, or in baseball rather, but he'll also hit 40 home runs. Yeah. So there's a real difference here. Simmons, first of all, isn't that kind of hitter. But even his average, 250, 260, 270, it's not
It's not great.
He's the bottom of the lineup guy. They can maybe in the American League use him to hit ninth and kind of swing the lineup around, which might increase his value a little bit. But it might be a bit of a steep price, so the Braves might have gotten away with something here. Well, Boston's an interesting case because the Angels just fell a bit short of the playoffs this year. The Red Sox are, I think, a bit more of a project team. They were really not very good at all this past season. Sorry, Dylan, but it was kind of true. So it's interesting. Obviously, Kimbrel, one of the best coaches in baseball, he'll close. I assume Koji Ohara will become the eighth inning man, and it does fill a need. Their bullpen was very bad this past year, so it fills a need in that part. I think they could use some more offensive help, personally, but I think there's quite a handful of holes to fill in that Red Sox team. Well, it's interesting because they're giving him $110 million, and I remember when I first read that amount of money, my first reaction was I think they overpaid a bit. I mean, as you said, they're lacking significantly, especially in the ace department. Without Price, without Scherzer, Justin Verlander, not the same pitcher he used to be, starting to get to like 35, 36 years old now. He's not the same pitcher. So, yeah, Zimmerman could be a front end, but they're paying him like an ace, and I'm not sure he's that. I think he's a very fine 2-3 guy. I mean, the Nationals had him as really kind of a 4 behind Scherzer and Strasburg and their stacked rotation. So I think the Tigers might have overpaid a little bit, but as we said, they needed that pitcher. They needed a front-end starter. And it does kind of balance the scales a little bit, considering Scherzer and Doug Fister went over to Washington. So now Detroit gets something back in return in Zimmerman from the Nationals. I'm holding out hope that Zobrist heads to Queens. The Mets have an opening at second base. They've inquired already with Zobrist's agent, and they're talking about it. I think Zobrist wants a 4-year contract. I don't know what the money situation would be. I'm interested to see what kind of money he's asking for. He's starting to get up there in age a little bit. So if he wants 4 years, maybe it's not a huge dollar amount per year. So there's a shot that the Mets could take that as a interesting signing. Price is interesting. I think he's got a lot more options. Red Sox is interesting because they certainly need an ace. I think they thought Clay Buchholz was going to be the guy. Didn't really pan out last year. So if they can pull in Price, I think he'd be a big help to them. So that's certainly an interesting team to watch, and I think would be interesting to see if he went there.